The night was cruelly silent, the kind of silence that screams louder than thunder. Elena knelt on the marble floor of her husband's mansion, her trembling hands balancing a crystal glass of red wine that seemed heavier than her entire body. At 8 months pregnant, every step hurt, every breath was a struggle, yet she moved slowly, obediently, toward the chaise where Victoria, her husband Daniel's mistress, sat like a queen. The other woman stretched lazily, her manicured nails tapping the armrest, her lips curved in a smirk that sliced through Elena's soul. Daniel watched with cold amusement, leaning against the marble fireplace in a tailored black suit that reflected his wealth and authority. His eyes, once the source of warmth and comfort for Elena, now carried only arrogance and disdain. "Careful," he said with a mocking chuckle. Elena staggered slightly. "If you spill a single drop, you'll clean the entire floor on your knees." Elena's throat tightened. She wanted to scream, to cry, to throw the glass and run. But her body reminded her of the fragile life inside, the baby who had already endured too much tension and fear. She swallowed her pride, forced her trembling lips into silence, and placed the wine gently into Victoria's waiting hand. Victoria took it with exaggerated grace, swirling the deep red liquid before taking a sip. "Perfect," she purred, her eyes flicking to Daniel with satisfaction. "She's learning her place." The words cut deeper than a knife. Elena was not a guest in her own home, not even a wife anymore. She was a servant, humiliated by the man she had once loved beyond reason. But it hadn't always been this way. Elena remembered the early days with Daniel, when everything sparkled with promises. He had courted her like a dream, candlelit dinners, whispered vows under starry skies, gifts that seemed too extravagant for a simple girl like her. He spoke of forever, of building a family, of protecting her always. She had believed him, blinded by his charm and the illusion of safety in his arms. When he placed the wedding ring on her finger, she thought she had won the world. The truth revealed itself slowly, like poison seeping drop by drop into her veins. Daniel's temper flared more often, his words grew colder, his eyes wandered. And then came Victoria, first as a rumor, then as an open wound that never healed. The humiliation intensified the day Daniel moved his mistress into their mansion. Elena had begged, her voice breaking, reminding him of her pregnancy, of the vows they had made. But Daniel only sneered, saying, "This is my house, my rules. Be grateful I still keep you here." From that moment, Elena's life became a nightmare. Victoria treated her not as a rival, but as a maid. She demanded Elena serve her meals, polish her jewelry, and even rub her feet when she grew tired. Daniel encouraged it, standing by as if cruelty were a form of entertainment. And through it all, Elena endured, silently praying her baby would never know this kind of world. But silence was not peace, it was suffocation. At night, when the mansion's halls finally quieted, Elena would curl into her bed alone, clutching her swollen belly and whispering to her unborn child. "You are my reason," she would murmur through tears. "You are my strength. One day, we will be free of this." Those whispered promises were the only thing keeping her alive. Yet fate, as cruel as it had been, was preparing to send her a savior. Isabella, Elena's twin sister, had always been her other half. Two souls born together, destined to walk side by side. But life had pulled them apart in adulthood. Isabella was fierce, ambitious, and unafraid to conquer the world. She built her own empire, a company admired across industries, and became a CEO before 30. She carried herself like fire, untouchable, unstoppable. Elena, by contrast, had chosen love over ambition, believing Daniel's wealth and promises would shield her from the storms of life. She had never told Isabella the full extent of her suffering, too ashamed, too afraid of being judged as weak. But truth cannot be buried forever. One rainy evening, a maid, one of the few who pitied Elena, secretly dialed Isabella's number. Her voice shook as she explained the torment Elena faced, begging Isabella before it was too late. Isabella's blood boiled with every word. She had always been protective of Elena, even as children. She remembered the nights they whispered dreams under the blanket, promising to always protect each other no matter what. And now, hearing that her gentle, pregnant sister was being forced to kneel and serve another woman in her own home, it lit a fire that no storm could extinguish. The next day, Isabella arrived unannounced. The mansion doors opened, and Elena nearly collapsed at the sight of her. Her sister stood tall, her dark suit immaculate, her hair sleek, her eyes blazing with fury and heartbreak. Elena's lips trembled as she tried to swell, but tears betrayed her. Isabella rushed forward, gathering her twin into her arms, feeling the fragile body tremble. For a long moment, they clung to each other, as if time itself had rewound to their childhood days, when hugs could solve everything. But then Isabella lifted her gaze, and saw Daniel. He stood at the top of the staircase, his arrogance unshaken, as though Isabella's presence was nothing but an annoyance. "You're not welcome here," he spat, his voice laced with disdain. "This is my house." Isabella's jaw clenched, her hand tightening protectively around Elena's shoulders. "Your house," she said, her voice sharp as steel. "No, this is my sister's home, and I will not leave until I've taken back everything you've stolen from her. Her dignity, her peace, her future." In that moment, Elena saw something she had long forgotten: hope. For the first time in years, she didn't feel completely alone. She had her sister, her mirror, her strength. From that day forward, Isabella's silent war against Daniel began. From the moment Isabella stepped into the mansion and wrapped her arms around Elena, the balance of power shifted. Daniel didn't see it immediately, but something in the air had changed. For years, he had thrived on control, bending Elena's spirit until she barely recognized herself. But Isabella was not Elena. She was fire where her sister was water, steel where her sister was silk. Daniel's arrogance blinded him to the storm gathering around him. Until it was far too late. Isabella left the mansion that day with Elena's tears still damp on her shoulder, her heart pounding with both fury and purpose. She made a vow in silence as her car sped through the city lights. Daniel would with every moment he had made her sister kneel, every insult he had allowed, every scar of humiliation he had inflicted. Isabella was not just a sister, she was a CEO with influence, resources, and an iron will. And unlike Daniel, she knew how to fight with both brains and heart. The first strike was subtle. Isabella reached out to Daniel's partners through back channels, quietly buying shares, outbidding his offers, and turning his closest allies into silent enemies. She knew his empire well. Daniel had built it on charm and ruthlessness, but also on shaky foundations of corruption. Isabella's team began to dig, uncovering fraudulent contracts, hidden debts, and shady dealings he thought were buried. Piece by piece, she prepared to dismantle him in the one place he thought he was untouchable: his wealth. Meanwhile, she stayed close to Elena. The gentle twin who had once bowed her head now began to lift it, even if shakily at first. Isabella encouraged her to rediscover herself, reminding her daily that she was not a burden, not weak, not defined by the cruelty of a man. Elena would sit in Isabella's apartment, safe for the first time in years, and listen to her sister's fierce voice. "You are worth more than every stone in his mansion, every dollar in his account. And soon, the world will know it." For the first time in months, Elena began to smile. Her hand often rested on her belly as if drawing courage from the tiny heartbeat inside. She spoke softly to her unborn daughter, telling her of the aunt who had become a shield of fire around them both. Daniel, however, was too consumed by greed to notice the shifting tide. He reveled in Victoria's presence, flaunted his supposed power, and mocked Elena's absence, convinced she would crawl back once she had no choice. But then came the first blow. His biggest deal collapsed overnight. Investors withdrew, citing instability. Partners pulled out, claiming irreconcilable differences. At first, Daniel raged, blaming incompetence in his team, never imagining Isabella's quiet hand guiding it all. But the losses mounted. His accounts began bleeding money, his reputation tarnished by whispers of corruption Isabella had strategically leaked to the press. Daniel's arrogance began to crack, replaced with restless fury. Then came Isabella's second strike. She filed legal action on Elena's behalf, backed by a team of high-powered attorneys who made Daniel's own lawyers look like amateurs. They uncovered proof of emotional abuse, exploitation, and even financial manipulation within the marriage. In the courtroom, Isabella's presence was like a lioness defending her wounded sister. Daniel, who had once smirked at Elena's silence, now watched in disbelief as his estranged wife, guided by her twin, stood taller, spoke louder, and no longer trembled under his gaze. Victoria, the mistress who once basked in his wealth, soon realized the sinking ship could not carry her vanity. She left without a backward glance, trading Daniel for another wealthy man with more stability. Her departure left him exposed, alone in the vast mansion he had once filled with arrogance. But Isabella was not done. She turned the media spotlight on Elena, not as a victim, but as a survivor. Articles were published about her story, about the cruelty she endured and the strength she found through her child and her sister. The world began to see Alina not as the billionaire's forgotten wife, but as a symbol of resilience. Support flooded in. Women writing letters and messages telling her she had given them hope to leave their own toxic relationships. Daniel's empire collapsed faster than he could rebuild. Within months, his accounts were frozen, his partners gone, his reputation in ruins. The man who once controlled Alina with wealth now stood with nothing but his pride, and even that was crumbling. The final act of Isabella's revenge came the night Alina went into labor. The hospital room was filled with tension, pain, and tears, but also love. Isabella never left Alina's side, holding her hand through every contraction, whispering courage into her ear. Hours passed, each moment agonizing, but finally a sharp cry filled the room. Alina's daughter came into the world, tiny, beautiful, and perfect. Tears streamed down Alina's cheeks as the nurse placed the baby in her arms. She kissed the soft forehead and whispered, "You are my freedom, my reason to live." Isabella stood beside her, her heart swelling with pride. For all the battles she had fought in boardrooms and courts, nothing compared to this moment. The sight of her twin reborn as a mother, no longer broken but radiant with love. Daniel arrived at the hospital hours later, desperation etched across his face. His empire was gone, his mistress gone, his wealth bleeding away. He demanded to see Alina, to see his child, as though he still had rights to claim. But security, hired by Isabella, barred him at the entrance. For the first time in his life he was powerless. Alina, holding her daughter, allowed herself one final glance at him through the glass doors. His once proud shoulders slumped, his eyes filled with the emptiness of a man who had destroyed everything with his own hands. She did not shout or curse. She simply turned away, her silence more powerful than any words. For Daniel, that was the ultimate punishment, to be erased from the life he once controlled. As weeks turned into months, Alina rebuilt her world with Isabella by her side. She moved into a warm, sunlit home where her daughter grew surrounded by love, not fear. She began speaking publicly about her journey, advocating for women trapped in toxic relationships, becoming a voice for those too afraid to speak. Her story inspired thousands, her gentle strength shining brighter than any jewel Daniel had once draped on her. Isabella watched with pride as her sister blossomed into the woman she was always meant to be. She had fought for revenge, but what mattered most was Alina's rebirth. Together, they proved that no amount of cruelty could extinguish the bond between sisters, or the love of a mother for her child. Alina had been broken, humiliated, and stripped of her dignity. But she rose again, not through money or revenge alone, but through love, courage, and the unshakable bond of family. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with those who need hope, and subscribe to Royal Stories. Your engagement means more than words. It helps us continue creating tales that heal, inspire, and remind us all of the power of resilience and love. Special request to comment: if you believe sisters are the strongest protectors in the world, write LOYLTY in the comments to honor Isabella's fight for Alina.